Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem wa ala abdihil masihil ma'ud. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. May peace and blessings of Allah be upon you. A couple of weeks ago, I came across a very bizarre lecture given by an American Muslim cleric by the name of Dr. Yasir Qadhi. In this lecture, Qadhi Sahib went on a diatribe against Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, alayhi salam, the promised Messiah and Imam Mahdi of this age. And I say this lecture was bizarre because it was full of lies, deceit, and if it were given by an average person, I might have ignored it and I might have thought, okay, maybe he's ignorant, he did not really know. But this is a person who is a so-called Muslim scholar. He has a PhD from a leading American university and he holds a podium at a large mosque in Texas area, and he claims to have done his research, and yet he comes up with cherry-picked points, contradictions, a lecture full of contradictions and as well as lies. So unless Qadhi Sahib comes back with withdrawing his statements that he made against Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salam, I will put forward my evaluation about his statements that it was a bizarre lecture full of deceit and lies in addition to contradictions. And before I jump into that, and I'll give you examples of what those contradictions and those lies are, but before I jump into that, I do want to point out that it's very sad that anybody who knows about the fabric of Muslim society across different countries of the world and how the sectarianism prevails and exists, and Qadhi Sahib himself knows about that very well. They know that Ahmadis are a persecuted community in many countries of the world, and not only Ahmadis, but there's so many sects within Islam which are kind of marginalized or looked down upon by the majority sect in the region where they are at. And in the month of Muharram, for example, in a country like Pakistan, which does have a large, a significant percentage of educated Muslims, yet there are bomb blasts that take place in a sectarian setting, between Sunni and Shia and vice versa. Killings that happen in the name of religion, bomb blasts that happen in the name of Islam, like suicide bombings happen in the masjids and the mosques, and yet it's sad that Qadhi Sahib he decides to go on his diatribe where he continues to use this word lakum, this sentence from the Quran, the verse from the Quran, Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajeem, Bismillahir rahmanir rahim, lakum deenukum waliya deen, which is about those kafirs or disbelievers who were attacking Islam and wanted to eliminate Islam and Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his followers back in the day. He continues to use that word, that sentence, and imply the word kafir for the Ahmadis in his lecture. And he is very well aware of that because he does mention in his own lecture that he's not condoning any violence against Ahmadis. He is not supporting any kind of like killing or any harm to be done to the Ahmadi people or the Ahmadi community. So he's very, very well aware of that, yet he chooses to go on that path, which is a path of division. It's a divisive message for so many Muslim countries. Anyway, let me get into the specifics of some of the specifics of the lecture. So first of all, Qadhi Sahib sort of tries to ridicule or is sarcastic about the number of Ahmadis in the world. I don't know why it matters to him, because the religion is not a numbers game. The faith is not a numbers game. The person who believes what he or she believes in, it does not matter to him or her if other people believe in that, have that faith or not. And anyone who knows about the history of the messengers that came to this world, in the beginning, those messengers were a minority. Of course, every message started from one person. Qadhi Sahib lives in America. The America is a country which is driven by whose economy is driven by technology, and everybody knows that these companies start small, they go big. So when they are small, it does not mean anything about the correctness or the wrongness of their message. Yet Qadhi Sahib chooses that path of ridiculing Ahmadiyya community, saying that, oh yeah, it's a tiny community. It might be tiny, but if it's so tiny and so insignificant, then why Qadhi Sahib has chosen to pick up the mic and go against, talk about the Ahmadiyya community or the founder of the Ahmadiyya community for almost 1 hour. I have no, I can come up with no reason for that except for falling back on the reason given by Quran, that whenever God appoints someone, then in this world, then the people ridicule him, people ridicule his followers as well. Unfortunately, Qadhi Sahib has adopted the same path. Then Qadhi Sahib he spends a significant time of his lecture about the famous Ayat Khatam al-Nabiyyin, its meaning and how it means the prophethood has ended in all its meanings. Yet he conveniently omits and neglects to specify that, including himself, the vast majority of Muslims believe in the Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, Jesus Christ alayhi salam, Hazrat Isa alayhi salam of Nazareth, that he will be descending from skies to this world again, and he was a prophet, he is a prophet, he will be a prophet, because that's what the hadith of Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam calls him, Nabiullah. So nobody can take away his status of being a prophet away from him. The vast majority of Muslims believe him to come and outlast, in terms of physical age, Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Khatam al-Nabiyyin. And in addition to that, the vast majority of Muslims believe for an Imam Mahdi, figure of an Imam Mahdi to come to this world as well. And we know that even though explicitly Imam Mahdi has not been called as a prophet, but the belief about Imam Mahdi is such that, number one, he will be a human being. Number two, he will get revelation from God. God will tell him, he will get revelation from God that he is an Imam, he is the leader of the Muslims at that time. And thirdly, it will be necessary for all the Muslims to accept him. So any person with whom these three qualities are combined, that can only be a prophet. There can be no other person who has this entitlement to be inspired by God, get revelation from God, and for the whole world or the Muslims to for the people to necessarily accept him as somebody sent by God. So Imam Mahdi is a person that Muslims themselves are awaiting as well. So the only difference that Ahmadis have, or the difference in sort of the doctrinal difference that Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salam has from the rest of the Muslims, is that he claimed that he is the second coming of Jesus Christ alayhi salam, because Hazrat Isa alayhi salam from Nazareth has passed away from this world, a natural death like all of the prophets did and like human beings do. And He also claimed to be that Imam Mahdi, the same Imam Mahdi that everybody or most of the Muslims are awaiting based on the prophecies of Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's very contradictory to keep on saying about Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being Khatamul Nabiyyin, and yet holding these beliefs, which everybody does, and the only difference that Ahmadis have is that they simply believe that that person, the Imam Mahdi and the Messiah who has been promised, has come in the form of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salam of Qadian. Anyway, I'm not going to focus on this particular point in this video, but I do want to fast forward to an allegation which is a complete lie that Qadhi Sahib brought up in his lecture. Here, take a listen.
Now back to Mirza Ghulam and then we'll finish. Of course, many scholars refuted him. Many scholars pointed out his deviancy. The most famous incident that our children need to know. One of the great muhaddithin and scholars of India, Sheikh Sana'ullah Al-Amritsari. Sheikh Sana'ullah Al-Amritsari. He was a muhaddith, a scholar, a professor of hadith and teacher and alim. He had multiple debates and writings back and forth public until finally in 1907 he issued a challenge, and this challenge was put in the newspaper. He said, may Allah's la'na be upon one of the two of us who is lying. Whoever I am saying the Prophet ﷺ is the last prophet, you are saying you are the prophet. May Allah's la'na come on whoever is lying, and may he die a death in the lifetime of the other. This is my la'na mubahala is called. This is my mubahala. I am invoking Allah's curse on the liar. And I'm saying that let the liar die in the lifetime of the other person. And he published this, that khalas, let it be. That is what you call iman. But subhanallah, that's truth as well. And barely a few months after publishing this letter, in 1908, Mirza Ghulam got struck with cholera and he died an ignoble death. And Sheikh Sana'ullah Al-Amritsari lived another 40 years, migrated to Pakistan, lived in Pakistan, then died in Pakistan. 40 years Allah wanted to show who is the two of these two is the liar.
So Qadhi Sahib claimed that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salam passed away as a result of losing mubahala with Maulvi Sana'ullah Amritsari Sahib. So let's take a look at the facts that what actually happened. So I will take you through this whole timeline of events with the evidence, and then we'll come to see how truthful or untruthful Qadhi Sahib has been in his claim. Back and forth between Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani alayhi salam and Maulvi Sana'ullah Amritsari Sahib started in July of 1896 in terms of Mubala, when Mirza Ghulam Ahmad wrote a book called Anjam Atham, in which he invited Sana'ullah Amritsari Sahib for Mubala. And what would you have thought that there's a false claimant of, from a Sana'ullah Amritsari's viewpoint, a false claimant of prophethood, and here's a person who is inviting Muslim scholars for Mubala. What would he have done as as brave a scholar Sana'ullah Amritsari Sahib was, as Qadhi Sahib reflected on that? Well, he did not do anything. No response whatsoever received for 6 years. Then, in September of 1902, Sana'ullah Amritsari Sahib expressed a desire for Mubala. That's September of 1902. In November of 1902, just barely 2 months later, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad puts forth Mubala protocol in his book Ijaz Ahmadi. The original is in Urdu. I'll read for you briefly and then I'll do the translation for you. So Hazur says, Pas agar मौलवी सनाउल्लाह साहब ऐसे चैलेंज के लिए मुस्तैद हों तो सिर्फ तहरीरी खत काफ़ी ना होगा, बल्कि उनको चाहिए कि एक छपा हुआ इश्तिहार इस मजमून का शाया करें. And then he gives further details and finally concludes, तो मुझे इस शख्स की मौत से पहले मौत दे, और अगर मैं इस अकीदा में सादिक हूँ और ये शख्स दर हकीकत दज्जाल है, बेईमान, काफिर, मुर्तद है और हजरत मसीह आसमान पर जिंदा मौजूद हैं जो किसी नामालूम वक्त में फिर आएंगे, तो इस शख्स को हलाक कर ता फितना और तफरका दूर हो और इस्लाम को एक दज्जाल और मगवी और मुज़ल से जरर ना पहुंचे. आमीन सुम्मा आमीन. So Mirza Ghulam Ahmad invited Maulvi Sanaullah Sahib to say that if I am a liar in my claim that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad is a false claimant of being from God, and in fact there is Hazrat Isa alayhi salam is alive up in the skies and he's going to be descending at some point in future, then may God cause death of this person, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. But if that's not true, then of course the death will come upon Maulvi Sanaullah Sahib himself. So this invitation is put forward by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad to Sanaullah. And what would he have done? He makes an escape. How? Let's read. This is a publication from Maulvi Sanaullah Sahib from 1902, December. He says, Chunke ye khaksar, and this is the original in Urdu, I'll read and then translate for you in English. चूंकि ये खाकसार ना वाकई में और ना आपकी तरह नबी या रसूल या इब्न अल्लाह या इल्हामी है, इसलिए ऐसे मुकाबला की जुर्रत नहीं कर सकता. Says that since I am not a claimant to be from God like you are, I do not dare, I do not have the courage to accept this kind of, to be in this kind of competition with you. Okay. Then what happens? 4 more years pass by. The year is 1905, December, and Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, Islam, he writes a book, a famous book, many Ahmadis know about it, called The Will. In Urdu it's called Risala al-Wasiyat, in which he announces that he has received revelations from God, that his own time of his own death, his passing away is near. He's born in about 1835, so actually in 1835 AD. So he is over 70 years of age already. So he announces that God has told him that in about a few years he will depart from this world. What happens next? In the June of 1906, so barely 6 months after that, because this news spreads around, the word spreads, Maulvi Sanaullah Amritsari Sahib again expresses his desire to do Mubala. Okay, at that time, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salam is writing a voluminous book called The Philosophy of the Reality of Revelation, Haqiqat al-Wahi. He invites formally in the February, in about 7 months, formally invites Maulvi Sanaullah Amritsari to request Mubala to him, right? That get into the spirit duel where we invoke God's prayer or God's curse on the other person to die for the one who's truthful to remain alive, and the one who's liar dies in the lifetime of the truthful person. And what would Sanaullah Sahib do? He does not put forward any Mubala request yet. He again expresses a desire that he wishes to go for Mubala, but he does not put forward any particular conditions. Anyway, what does Mirza Ghulam Ahmad do? He formally issues a Mubala statement on April 15th of 1907 to Sanaullah Amritsari. Here's that statement, how he prefaces that. He says, मैं देखता हूं कि मौलवी सनाउल्लाह इन्हीं तहमतों के जरिए से मेरे सिलसिला को नाबूद करना चाहता है और इस इमारत को मुनद्दम करना चाहता है जो तूने मेरे आका और मेरे भेजने वाले अपने हाथ से बनाई है. इसलिए मैं तेरे ही तकद्दुस और रहमत का दामन पकड़कर तेरी जनाब में मुल्तजी हूं कि मुझ में और सनाउल्लाह में सच्चा फैसला फरमा, और जो तेरी निगाह में दर हकीकत मुफसिद और कज़ाब है इसको सादिक की जिंदगी में ही दुनिया से उठा ले, या किसी और सख्त आफत में जो मौत के बराबर हो मुब्तला कर. सो he says, as it goes in Mubala, that the liar dies in the lifetime of the truthful. And then he says, okay, बिलाखिर मौलवी साहब से इल्तमास है कि वो मेरे इस मजमून को अपने पर्चा में छाप दें और जो चाहे इसके नीचे लिख दें. So he invites Maulvi Sanaullah Sahib to take the statement, print it in his publication, and gives his sign of approval or acceptance that he is okay about it. And what did Sanaullah Sahib do? He refuses to endorse it. How? Here is the image of the actual newspaper from that time. This is April 26th, barely 9 days after the statement put forward by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. This is, as you can see, the date here, 26 April 1907. Original excerpt. He says, Maulvi Sanaullah Amritsari Sahib says, ये कि इस दुआ की मंजूरी मुझसे नहीं ली और बगैर मेरी मंजूरी किसको शाया कर दिया. He says, the approval for this prayer has not been, I do not approve this, approval has not been gotten from me, it has been published without my permission. Then he says, सोम ये कि मेरा मुकाबला तो आपसे, अगर मैं मर गया तो मेरे मरने से और लोगों पर क्या हुज्जत हो सकती है. He says, my competition is with you. If I died, then what sign will it hold for the people? पंजम. He says, तुम्हारी ये दुआ किसी सूरत में फैसला कुन नहीं हो सकती. This prayer of yours cannot be a final settlement between us. हफ्तम. आपने पहले अपने गुज़श्ता मजमून मुदरजा अहले हदीस 19 अप्रैल के फिक्रा नंबर 4 में लिखा था कि खुदा के रसूल चूंकि रहीम करीम होते हैं और उनकी हर वक्त यही ख्वाहिश होती है कि कोई शख्स हलाकत और मुसीबत में ना पड़े, मगर अब क्यों आप मेरी हलाकत की दुआ करते हैं. He says that you have claimed or reflected on this before, that the messengers of God are gracious and merciful in the, taking it from God, being in the image of God, and their desire all the time is that no person should get into destruction and difficulty. Then why do you pray for my death? So Maulvi Sanaullah Amritsari clearly runs away from it. But note at this time that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad is 72 years of age. This is according to the solar years, that is 365 days in a year. He is 72 years of age. And what is the age of Maulvi Sanaullah Amritsari? 39 or about 39, because the record in those days was not kept as meticulously, the birth record was not kept as meticulously as it's done these days. So a 39-year-old or young man, if you will, refuses to get into, he claims that he is on the right side of things. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani is on the wrong side of things, yet this 39-year-old man refuses to get into a mubala with a 72-year-old man. And yet in the same paper he says, what's the rationale that he puts forward for not accepting this prayer duel, this mubala? You can see on the screen. आप इस दावा में कुरान शरीफ के सरी खिलाफ कह रहे हैं. कुरान तो कहता है कि बदकारों को खुदा की तरफ से मोहलत मिलती है. The Quran says that wrongdoers get a stretch from God. They get a longer life from God. And he has quoted these verses from the Quran. I'll show you on the screen what those verses are. And after quoting those verses, he says that खुदा ताला झूठे दगाबाज मुफसिद और नाफरमान लोगों को लंबी उम्रें दिया करता है ताकि उस मोहलत में और भी बुरे काम कर लें. कि God gives long life to liars, fraudsters, disobedient, and mufsid is somebody who creates a troublemaker, who creates a trouble in the society. God gives such people long age, so they can undertake more of their wrongdoings in the life that the long life that they will get. So this is the criteria, or this is the rationale that Maulvi Sanawala Amritsari put forward. So for refusing to get into mubala with him, the prayer for the death on the other person. So keep in mind though that if it comes to your mind that why did Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani not issue a one-sided prayer, a unilateral prayer against prayer restriction against Maulvi Sanawala Sahib? So I'll show you from his own writing. Mirza Sahib says, हाँ ये सच है कि मैंने बाज अशखास की मौत वगैरह की निस्बत पेशगोई की है. So in his lifetime he did predict death upon enemies of Islam, and those people did die, but those prophecies were done, लेकिन ना अपनी तरफ से बल्कि उस वक्त उस हालत में जबकि उन लोगों ने अपनी रजा और रगबत से ऐसी पेशगोई के लिए मुझे तहरीरी इजाजत दी. So when those people invited Mirza Sahab or invoked Mirza Sahab for Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani al-Islam for doing the prayer about destruction, the prayer of death, the mubala with them, only then Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani al-Islam issued that prayer or the prophecy of the death against those people. Who are those people? Lekram, Pandit Lekram from the Hindu community was one of them. Alexander Dewey was one of them. The Boston Herald at the time gave this glorified comment about Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani. He says, 23 were the days of August 1903 when Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, India, foretold the death of Alexander Dewey, Eclep Elijah, which took place last March. So other people did die based on the prophecy of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani al-Islam, yet Sanawala Sahib put forward a different criteria about the truthful and the liar, and he leaned on Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life, because at the time of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there was a person, Musalma Kazab, who was a claimant to prophethood, and he outlived, in terms of physical age, he outlived Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because as we all know that he had a fight with a war with Hazrat Abu Bakr's army after Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had passed away. So in terms of physical age, he outlived Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So Sanawala says that his rationale was that the liar outlives the honest person, and he put forward these verses of the Quran. So just based on his own criteria put forward, documented by himself, that's exactly how God behaved with him. So Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani Islam, he passed away in May of 1908, according to the predictions that he was making about himself. Maulvi Sanawala Amritsari Sahib lived for another 40 years, based on the standards set forth for the wrongdoers from the Holy Quran. However, he did not have an happy ending. He did not have a good ending. He died a miserable death, as his only son was assassinated in front of his own eyes, and all books, all of his sort of legacy was burned down in front of his own eyes as well. This is the official biography that was done for Sanawala Amritsari Sahib. You can take a look at your screens. It says, लुटेरों ने इसी पर बस ना की, बल्कि वो आपका अजीज तरीन कुतुब खाना, जिसमें हज़ार रुपए की नाजाब और कीमती किताबें थी, और जिनको आपने बड़ी मेहनत और जांफशानी से जमा किया और ख़रीदा था, जलाकर खाक कर दी. किताबों के जलने का सदमा मौलाना को इकलौते फर्जंद की शहादत से कम ना था. ये किताबें हजरत की का सरमाया ज़िंदगी थी. This was his life collection, his treasure of the life, and this tragedy was no less for him, no less than the death or the assassination of his son. ये सदमा जान का आपको आखिरी दम तक रहा. This trauma remained with him through till his last. और हकीकत में आपकी नागहानी मौत का सबब ये दो सदमात ही थे. And your death was because of these two reasons: the assassination of the son and the burning of his library, including his own books. So that was the end of Hazrat. That's the end of Maulvi Sanallah Mursari Sahib. What happened to the legacy of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani alayhi salam? Over 100 years have passed away. His community has spread to more than 200 countries of the world. There are missionaries all over. There are more than 80 translations of the Quran done by the Ahmadiyya Jamaat. You can go on the internet, you can see for yourself the progress and the service that Ahmadiyya Jamaat has done for Islam and the defense that it has put forward for preaching a peaceful teaching and a peaceful interpretation of Islam that is aligned with the modern life, science that can combine the new life, the new values with the traditional values, and how it has shown to the world how the true Islam, the original Islam, is aligned with the modern life or parts of the modern life as well. Coming back to the comment that Qadhi Sahib was putting forward, you can make your own judgment after I put forward these facts to you. All I will say is, Lanatullah al-Kazibin, it's from the Quran. If Qadhi Sahib he thinks, he believes that he's on the right side of things, he should invoke Lanatullah al-Kazibin. May the curse of God be on the liar, and he will see for himself the result, how the God's taqdeer, the God's destiny, takes care of the person who is, and how God's destiny humiliates the person, and it takes him to the real ignoble death, as Qadhi Sahib mentioned that allegedly, actually it was a lie, that Mirza Ghulam Qadiani al-Islam had. This video has gotten longer than I wished for it to be, but thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time, and please let me know your comments. I think this is it for now. I will inshallah talk to you again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.